You check into your mountain rental. The photos matched. The house seemed normal, but when your phone drops behind the nightstand at 2 a.m., and you use your blacklight keychain to find it, you see names glowing on the wall. Dozens of names, dates, coordinates, and at the bottom, in handwriting that makes your stomach drop, your own name, written 3 weeks before you ever booked. How did someone know you were coming to a place you chose randomly yesterday? Before we decode what investigators found inside that rental's walls, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because this channel dives deep into the stories that make you question everything you thought was safe. We're building a community of people who refuse to stay in the dark, and I promise you, by the end of this investigation, you'll never look at a rental listing the same way. Now, let's get into it. 3 things you need to understand before we go further. First, ultraviolet reactive ink has been used by intelligence agencies since the Cold War, specifically a compound called anthracene, dissolved in ethanol, which remains invisible under normal light, but fluoresces at 365 nanometers second. There exists a practice among certain underground networks called guest harvesting, where transient lodging spaces are mapped not for their commercial value, but for the predictable rotation of isolated, traceable individuals. Third, in 2019, a security researcher named Kailash Nad published a paper on what he termed probabilistic reservation forecasting, demonstrating how machine learning models could predict Airbnb bookings with 87% accuracy using only publicly scraped data, time series analysis of regional search trends, and social media movement patterns. That paper was quietly removed from ResearchGate. 6 months after publication, no explanation was ever provided. The property sat at the edge of Gila National Forest in New Mexico, 12 miles from the nearest paved road. A converted fire watchtower, last renovated in 2014, owned by a limited liability company, registered in Delaware with a single member whose name appeared on no other public record. The listing had 47 5-star reviews, all from accounts created within weeks of leaving their feedback, all using profile pictures that reverse image search linked to stock photography sites. The description emphasized seclusion, star visibility, and what he called a digital detox environment, noting that cellular service was non-existent and satellite internet was available only upon request. For an additional fee, the nightly rate was $89, suspiciously low for a property with such specific amenities and a supposedly renovated interior. The calendar showed sporadic bookings, never consecutive, usually 3 to 5 day gaps between guests. Always single travelers or couples, never families, never groups. Mira Castellanos booked it on a Tuesday afternoon in October 2023. She was driving from Albuquerque to Tucson, needed a halfway point, wanted somewhere she could see the Orionid meteor shower without light pollution. She filtered for remote, hot tub, and less than $100. The tower appeared. Say, clicked. The photos showed exposed beam ceilings, a renovated kitchenette with high-end appliances, a clawfoot tub positioned near a panoramic window, Moroccan rugs layered over sealed concrete floors. One review mentioned the most profound silence I've ever experienced. Another said, "You'll feel like the last person on earth." She booked for one-night check-in after 4 p.m. Check-out before 11 a.m. The host's message was brief. Lockbox code is 7491. Enjoy the solitude. Do not arrive before 4 p.m. This cleaning crew needs full access. That last sentence was bold. She arrived at 6:30 p.m., just as the sun dropped behind the ridge. The tower stood exactly as photographed. 3 stories of stacked stone and steel, solar panels angled on the roof. A gravel lot with space for 2 vehicles. No other cars, no sounds except wind moving through pine and pines. The lockbox opened smoothly. Inside, everything was pristine. Tout pristine. The kind of clean that suggested professional staging rather than actual use. The bathroom had hotel-style folded towels, a wicker basket with sample-sized toiletries, a handwritten note on cream cardstock. Welcome. The breaker panel is in the northeast corner if you experience any electrical issues. Please respect the space, as others will follow. The handwriting was precise, architectural, each letter uniform. Mira made tea, watched the sky shift through purples and indigos, set up a camera on the exterior deck to capture long exposures of the meteor shower. She noticed the hot tub was drained. Odd, since the listing specifically mentioned it. She checked her phone. No service, as expected. She opened her laptop. The satellite Wi-Fi network appeared but required a password the host hadn't provided. Fine. She had downloaded 3 albums and a novel. She settled in. At 2:14 a.m., she woke to use the bathroom. Her phone had slid off the nightstand, wedged between the frame and the wall. She crouched, used her keychain, a small black light let her brother, gave her 4 checking hotel cleanliness to illuminate the gap. That's when she saw it. A faint glow on the baseboards. She angled the light. Upward, the entire western wall fluoresced. Names, dates, some with full addresses, others with abbreviations she didn't recognize. GPS coordinates in decimal degrees. A column labeled door with numbers ranging from 1 to 7. Another column, CONF, with check marks, or X marks, and they're 2/3 down, in the same architectural handwriting from the welcome note, M. Castellanos, October 17th to 18th. 34.9, 485, N108.5, 621, W. DUR1, CONF pending. Her coordinates, her exact coordinates. But she hadn't entered them anywhere. She had simply clicked a map pin on Airbnb's interface, which displayed the approximate area, not a precise geolocation. And her last name, spelled correctly, which she had never entered during booking. Airbnb's system only required a first name and last initial for guest profiles. Her account showed Mirasi, yet here was her full surname, written in ink that only revealed itself under ultraviolet light. She scanned the rest of the wall. 43 names. The earliest date was April 2021. The most recent, excluding hers, was October 9th, 8 days prior. That guest was labeled J. Chun, October 9th to 10th, CONF. Most entries had check marks. 7 had X marks. She cross-referenced the coordinates of one check-marked entry using her cached maps. It resolved to a residential address in Boise, Idaho. Another led to an apartment complex in Athens, Georgia. The X-marked entries pointed to seemingly random locations. A rest stop in Nebraska, a parking lot outside a Walmart in Oklahoma, a campground in Utah that Google reviews indicated had been closed since 2018. She photographed everything. Her hands shook enough that the first dozen shots came out blurred. She forced herself to breathe, adjusted her camera settings, set a tripod. She documented each name, every coordinate, the strange abbreviations, PROC, EXT, NOC, VINT, under several names. A secondary line of text. Asset recovered or asset neg or subject rerouted. One entry, dated June 2022, had a red asterisk and a note in smaller script. Anomaly detected. Protocol Bravo enacted. Sia relocati Mira's training kicked in. She was a data analyst for an insurance company, specialized in pattern recognition, anomaly detection, and claims processing. She saw the structure immediately. This was a tracking system. The dates corresponded to booking windows. The coordinates matched destinations. The door likely indicated duration, but CONF and the other abbreviations, the check marks versus X marks, the references to assets and subjects that suggested something beyond mere surveillance. This was operational language, the kind used in logistics or intelligence work. Or something worse. She checked the door. Still locked from the inside. She moved to the windows, all secure. But now she noticed something she'd missed earlier. Small drill holes in the upper corners of each window frame, recently filled and painted over, but visible under close inspection. Mounting points for something. Cameras, likely, or sensors. She scanned the ceilings. Nothing obvious. But in the bathroom, above the mirror, a tiny lens glinted behind what appeared to be a smoke detector. She stood on the toilet, examined it. Not a smoke detector. No brand markings, just a lens and a faint red lead that pulsed once every 30 seconds. The rental had been watching her, was still watching her. She went back to the wall, used her blacklight to scan every surface. The kitchen revealed a second list. Smaller, different format. This one had only 7 entries. Each labeled intake followed by a date and a single name. No coordinates, no duration. But next to each name, a word. Portland, Denver, Raleigh, Austin, Sacramento, Nashville, Boise. Cities. The dates ranged from March 2022 to August 2023. Under the list, a single line phase, 2 operational, yields within acceptable parameters. Mira felt the logic coalesce. The tower wasn't just documenting guests, it was selecting them. The algorithm Kalashnud had described the probabilistic forecasting. That wasn't theoretical speculation. Someone had operationalized it. They were predicting who would book this property, when, and why. They were preparing. The UV ink suggested the list was for internal use, meant to be invisible to guests, but accessible to someone with the right equipment. The cameras confirmed monitoring, but the references to assets, to protocols, to yields, that implied something transactional. Something extractive. She needed to leave. Now? But it was 2:47 a.m. 12 miles to the nearest road. No cell service. Her car, the only vehicle in the lot. If someone was watching, if someone was coming, leaving in the middle of the night would signal awareness. And if the X marks indicated subjects who had deviated from expected behavior, who had anomalies detected, then running might make her a target rather than simply another checkmark. She made a decision. She would behave normally. She would sleep, or pretend to. She would check out at the scheduled time. She would drive to the nearest town, find service, and contact authorities. But first, she needed more information. She returned to the western wall, photographed every entry in detail, then moved through the rest of the space with her blacklight. The ceiling in the bedroom had a third list. This one just coordinates and dates. No names. 26 pairs. She recognized one set immediately. 35.1983N, 111.6513. W. Flagstaff, Arizona. The city she'd lived in during graduate school. The detail mentioned nowhere in her public profiles, only in a long-deleted blog post from 2015. The date next to those coordinates, November 3rd, 2023. 17 days from now. a city she had no current plans to visit but had idly considered as a stopover during her Tucson trip. Predictive accuracy at that level required access to personal data far beyond public scraping, email monitoring, GPS tracking, calendar access, possibly even financial records to establish travel budgets and booking patterns. This wasn't amateur surveillance. This was infrastructure. She checked the breaker panel mentioned in the welcome note. Northeast corner, as indicated. She opened Italiano, standard circuit layout, but behind the panel, attached to the interior wall, a small black box with an antenna and a cellular modem, hardwired into the electrical system, independent of the main breakers. A dedicated uplink. This device was transmitting regardless of whether the tower had power. She photographed it, noted the model number. A commercial IoT gateway manufactured by a Taiwanese firm that specialized in remote asset monitoring for industrial applications. The kind of hardware used in oil pipelines, agricultural sensors, environmental monitoring stations, not rental properties. She closed the panel, returned to bed, lay in the dark with her eyes open. The ceiling camera's red pulse was faint but rhythmic. She wondered how many others had seen the lists, whether any had recognized their own names, whether the check marks meant they'd left unaware, compliant, converted into whatever data point the system was extracting, and whether the X marks meant they'd noticed and someone had intervened. At 6:15 a.m., the sun broke over the ridge. She rose, dressed, packed her bag, made coffee using the French press provided, drank it slowly. Normal behavior. Tourist behavior. At 10:40 a.m., she loaded her car, did a final walkthrough, relocked the door, and drove. The first 3 miles felt endless. Every curve could hide a vehicle. Every shadow in the trees could conceal a watcher, but the road remained empty. At mile 7, she passed a white panel van parked on a pull-off. No markings, windows tinted. Her rearview mirror caught the van pulling onto the road behind her, following, maintaining distance but matching her speed. She accelerated. The van matched. She reached the highway at mile 12. Turned south toward Silver City, floored it. The van stayed close for 6 miles, then took an exit toward an unmarked dirt road. She watched it disappear, her pulse still hammering. In Silver City, she found a cafe with Wi-Fi. She uploaded the photos to 3 separate cloud services, emailed copies to her brother and her closest friend with a message. If anything happens to me, share these. Then she called the local sheriff's department. The dispatcher listened, asked clarifying questions, said a deputy would meet her at the cafe. 40 minutes later, Deputy Marshal arrived. Mira showed him the photos. He studied them in silence, his expression shifting from skepticism to something harder to read. He asked for the property address. She provided it. "E made that call," spoke in low tones. "Then return. We'll send someone to check it out," he said. "But I need you to understand something. Properties in that area, especially the remote ones, they sometimes attract unusual interest. People doing things off-grid. Preppers, survivalists, crypto miners. It's not always illegal, just unconventional." "This wasn't prepping," Mira said. "This was targeting." He nodded slowly. "I hear you. We'll investigate. But I recommend you file a report with Airbnb as well. Get your booking refunded, and maybe consider staying somewhere more visible for the rest of your trip." She did. Airbnb's trust and safety team responded within 2 hours. The listing was suspended pending investigation. The hostess account was flagged. They refunded her payment and offered a $200 credit. The email included a line: "We take these matters seriously and have escalated your report to our specialized response unit." 3 days later, the listing reappeared under a different name, different photos, same location. The reviews were gone. The description was rewritten. But the coordinates matched. Mira contacted Airbnb again. They said the previous listing had been removed, and the new one was unrelated. She insisted. They said they couldn't discuss other users' accounts due to privacy policies. She threatened legal action. They stopped responding. She hired a private investigator, a former FBI analyst named Dominic Reese, who specialized in digital forensics. He took the case pro bono after seeing the photos. Within a week, he traced the LLC that owned the tower to a shell company in Belize, which connected to a venture capital firm in Palo Alto, which had partial funding from a defense contractor that held classified contracts with the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Agency. The connections were labyrinthine, designed to obscure, but the pattern was clear. The tower was part of a network, not one property. Dozens, possibly hundreds. Reese found similar listings across the Southwest, all with identical linguistic patterns in their descriptions, all emphasizing isolation and digital detox, all with sporadic booking calendars and reviews from accounts that exhibited bot-like behavior. Mapith. They formed a grid, each property positioned within 40 miles of a major highway or interstate, each offering similar amenities, each owned by different LLCs that ultimately traced back to the same financial structures. The grid covered Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, a web designed to capture transient travelers, solo wanderers, people seeking seclusion, but captured for what purpose? Reese pulled property records. The tower had been purchased in 2017 for $140,000. Renovations were completed in 2020. Total cost, approximately $380,000, according to permit filings. That level of investment for a property generating maybe $30,000 annually from rentals didn't make economic sense, unless the rentals were a secondary revenue stream or a cover. He checked utility records. The tower's electricity usage spiked during periods with no bookings, sometimes drawing 3 times the power a single guest would require. The pattern suggested computing equipment, servers, processing. One possibility emerged. The properties were nodes in a distributed surveillance network using guest traffic to train behavioral prediction models. The ultraviolet lists were logging actual arrivals against predicted arrivals, measuring algorithmic accuracy, refining the system. Guests were unwitting calibration data, their movements, their booking patterns, their destination coordinates, all fed into a machine learning framework designed to forecast human behavior at scale. But that didn't explain the references to assets, to protocols, to yields, unless the system wasn't just predicting behavior, unless it was shaping it, influencing it. Consider the mechanism. You search for lodging. The algorithm knows your history, your preferences, your budget, your destination. It surfaces listings designed to appeal specifically to your profile. You book. You arrive. The property monitors. You logs your activities, your routines, your communications. If you connect to the provided network, it correlates that data with your post-trip behavior, where you go next, what you purchase, who you contact. Over time, it builds a model not just of who you are, but of how you respond to specific stimuli, specific environments, specific framings. And then, in future searches, it surfaces options designed to guide you toward outcomes the system's operators desire. This is behavioral nudging at scale, operationalized through infrastructure that appears commercial but functions as a panopticon. The tower wasn't just watching Mira. It was part of a system learning how to steer people like her toward predictable, controllable patterns. The check marks indicated subjects who remained within expected parameters. The X marks indicated anomalies, people who deviated, who required intervention or reclassification. And the Phase 2 operational note suggested expansion, more properties, more data, more refined predictions. Eventually, a network capable of influencing travel patterns, consumption behavior, even social and political movements, by subtly shaping where people go, what they see, who they encounter. Reese drafted a report. He submitted it to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, to the FTC's Consumer Protection Division, to the Electronic Frontier Foundation. The FBI acknowledged receipt but declined to comment. The FTC said it was reviewing. The FF published a redacted summary on their blog, which gained moderate traction in privacy advocate circles, but no mainstream media coverage. No arrests were made. No properties were seized. The listings remained active. Mira returned to her life. She moved apartments, changed her phone number, used a VPN religiously, abandoned social media. She checked the tower's coordinates every few weeks using satellite imagery. The structure remained standing. Vehicles appeared and disappeared in the lot. The solar panels glinted in the sun. Life, or something resembling it, continued. Then, in January 2024, Reese called. He'd found something. A white paper, published by a tech startup called Sightline Dynamics, dated March 2023, titled Probabilistic Guest Flow Optimization in Distributed Hospitality Networks. The abstract described a machine learning platform capable of predicting booking behavior with unprecedented accuracy by integrating geospatial data, social signals, financial indicators, and environmental factors. The paper's lead author, Dr. Evelyn Kress, a former DARPA program manager who specialized in what the agency termed anticipatory intelligence systems. The company's funding, $12 million from a consortium that included the same venture capital firm connected to the tower's ownership structure. Sightline Dynamics' website was sparse. A landing page with a minimalist logo, a tagline transforming transients into insight, and a contact form. No team page, no product descriptions, no case studies. Reese submitted an inquiry posing as a potential client. No response. He checked the domain registration. Privacy protected. He searched for the company in business directories. No entries. He looked for social media presence. None. Sightline Dynamics existed just enough to have a paper trail, but not enough to be accountable. Then came the breakthrough. A former colleague of Reese's, someone still working federal law enforcement, confirmed off the record that Sightline was a known entity in intelligence circles, a contractor providing predictive analytics for national security applications. The colleague wouldn't elaborate, but the implication was clear. This wasn't corporate data harvesting. It was state-sponsored, and the tower, along with the broader network, was a testbed, a proof of concept for technology that could eventually be deployed at much larger scales, far beyond vacation rentals. Imagine the endgame. Every hotel, every rental property, every transient lodging space equipped with the same infrastructure, every guest monitored, logged, predicted, a panopticon disguised as hospitality, generating data that feeds into systems designed to forecast and influence not just individual behavior but mass movements, migration patterns, tourism flows, political gatherings, protest mobilizations, all predictable, all steerable. And because the monitoring happens in spaces people voluntarily enter, spaces they pay to access, the legal ambiguities are profound. Terms of service can waive rights. Privacy policies can authorize data collection. The infrastructure is privately owned, making Fourth Amendment protections inapplicable. The system operates in a gray zone where surveillance, capitalism, and state security interests converge, mutually reinforcing, mutually obscured. Now, consider the technical element. Ultraviolet ink is invisible, detectable only with specific equipment most people don't carry. The lists exist in physical space, harder to trace than digital records, exempt from data breach notifications or GDPR requests. The properties are remote, reducing the likelihood of accidental discovery. The bookings are sporadic, preventing patterns that might alert regulators or journalists. And the entire operation hides behind the mundane facade of the sharing economy, an industry already normalized, already ubiquitous, already trusted. From a cryptographic perspective, the system employs security through obscurity augmented by social engineering. The obscurity is the UV ink, the remote locations, the shell companies. The social engineering is the appeal to adventure, to solitude, to escape. People seek these properties because they want to disappear, which makes them ideal subjects for a system designed to track disappearance. The irony is recursively elegant. The desire for privacy becomes the mechanism of surveillance. From an engineering standpoint, the cellular uplink behind the breaker panel represents resilient design, independent power, independent connectivity, fail-safe operation. Even if the main systems are disabled, the uplink continues transmitting. Even if guests suspect something, they'd need to physically dismantle the electrical infrastructure to disable it, which crosses into property damage, creating legal liability that discourages action. And from a physics perspective, consider the UV ink itself. Anthracene fluoresces because its aromatic ring structure absorbs high-energy photons and re-emits them at lower energies. The effect is reversible, non-destructive, detectable across a wide range of intensities. It's the perfect medium for covert markings because it exploits a region of the electromagnetic spectrum human eyes don't naturally perceive but technologically accesses. The wall isn't hiding information. It's displaying it in a frequency most people simply can't see. What remains unanswered is who the X-mark subjects were and what happened to them. Mira found one of them. J. Chun. The October 9th entry, with a checkmark, was traceable through public records. A software engineer from San Jose, confirmed alive, active on LinkedIn. No apparent awareness of the tower's surveillance, but the X marks, the ones labeled anomaly, detected, or subject rerouted, those people were harder to find. Reese, located too. Both had disappeared shortly after their stays. Not dramatically. No missing person reports. They simply stopped posting on social media, stopped responding to emails, dropped out of contact. One was a freelance journalist who had been investigating data brokers. The other was a grad student researching surveillance, capitalism for a dissertation. Possibly coincidental. Possibly not. The wall's list grows. New names appear. New coordinates. Mira knows because she hired someone local, a handyman who agreed to rent the tower, bring a blacklight, photograph the wall. He sent images every few months. The list has expanded to 68 entries as of last report. Her name is still there, still marked CONF pending. Whatever confirmation they were waiting for, it hasn't arrived, or maybe it has, and the marking system uses a different notation now. She wonders sometimes if she was supposed to find the list, if the discovery was part of the test, if her reaction, her photographs, her outreach to authorities, her hiring of Reese, all of it was anticipated, logged, fed back into the model. If she's not a subject to escape the system, but a data point that refined it. There's a term in machine learning. Adversarial training. You expose a model to inputs designed to fool it, and the model adapts, becomes more robust, harder to deceive. Maybe the X marks aren't failures. Maybe they're features. Maybe the system wants some people to notice, to react, to resist, because those reactions teach it how to better hide, how to better predict who will notice, and how to neutralize them before they do. The tower still operates, the listings still rotate, the names still glow under blacklight, invisible to everyone except those who know to look. And somewhere, in a server farm or a classified facility or a venture-backed office in Palo Alto, the data accumulates, the predictions sharpen, the system learns. Mira checks the coordinates from the ceiling list every week. November 3rd came and went. She didn't go to Flagstaff. She went to Billings, Montana, a city she'd never visited, never mentioned, chosen by random number generator, a place the algorithm couldn't have predicted. She stayed in a corporate hotel chain, 15th floor, security cameras everywhere, zero privacy but total visibility. And she wondered, as she lay in that anonymous room, whether the system logged her deviation, whether she became an X mark in some other date, whether trying to escape had simply taught it how to predict escape. This is the part where I'd normally give you answers. Wrap it up neatly, tell you who's behind it, what they want, how it ends. But the truth is murky. The tower's ownership traces through so many shells. The ultimate accountability is obscured. The technology exists. The infrastructure is real. The pattern is undeniable. But attribution, motive, endgame, those remain speculative. What we know is that someone built a system to watch people who thought they were to predict people who thought they were unpredictable, to steer people who thought they were freely choosing. And the system works. So, here's a question I'll leave you with. How many places have you stayed that you picked because they felt random, spontaneous, off the beaten path? How many times have you sought isolation, celebrated finding that perfect hidden spot, congratulated yourself on escaping the crowd? And how confident are you that your choice was yours? That the algorithm surfacing that listing, presenting it at that moment, pricing it just within your budget, highlighting the exact amenities you value, that all of that was neutral, that you found it rather than it finding you. Check your booking history. Look at the patterns. Ask yourself whether the places you stayed were really discoveries or whether they were destinations someone else designed you to reach. And if you ever rent a remote property, if you ever seek that profound silence, that feeling of being the last person on earth, bring a blacklight. Scan the walls. See what names are glowing next to yours. Before you go, I need you to do two things. First, share this video. Not because I need the views, but because this story needs to reach people who are planning trips, who use these platforms, who think they're safe, because they're careful. Second, drop a comment. Tell me if you've ever felt like a rental was too perfect, too precisely what you needed. Tell me if you've ever noticed something off, something watching. This community thrives on shared awareness, and your experiences might be the missing piece. Someone else needs to connect the dots. And obviously, stay subscribed because we're just scratching the surface of how deep this surveillance infrastructure goes. Next video drops in 3 days, and you won't believe what we found in the metadata. Now, go check your walls.